But of course, Azerbaijan's top problem remains the unresolved conflict between Armenia and Azerbaijan. Here, everything is clear. One country wanted to expand its territory at the expense of the neighboring country, and then started raising illegal claims, and then started occupying, actually, the territory of that country. So Armenia has implemented this illegal occupation of Azerbaijan's internationally recognized territory. The war, first wars between two Union republics within the Soviet Union, and then after these two republics became independent, it turned into an international war, so to say, between the two countries. But it's of course about territory, 1/5 of your internationally recognized territory gets occupied. But it's also about human beings. 1 million Azeris today are refugees. Imagine, in the beginning of 1990s, Azerbaijan had 7 million population. And we had back then 1 million refugees. So every 7th inhabitant of Azerbaijan, citizen of Azerbaijan, was a refugee. And today, it's 9 million, 9.3 million. But of course, the number of refugees has increased also significantly. But they are still there. They are still refugees. They can't go back to their homes. They had to leave their homes, oftentimes overnight, leaving behind everything they had, and with the hope that they will come back. But since 20 years, due to the non-constructive position of the Armenian government, it's impossible to resolve this conflict, because the government of Armenia still sticks to the policy of occupation, despite the fact that the international community condemned this occupation. In 1993, when these territories were occupied, which include not only Nagorno-Karabakh region, but also 7 districts around Nagorno-Karabakh, where almost just few Armenians lived. Armenians lived primarily in Nagorno-Karabakh. Also, 25 to 30% of Nagorno-Karabakh's population were also Azeris. So, when the territories were occupied, the United Nations Security Council passed 4 resolutions condemning this illegal occupation, and very explicitly demanded the unconditional withdrawal of all Armenian troops from the occupied territories. But the resolutions were not implemented, were defied by Armenia, and as always, when there is a will in the Security Council, the resolutions get implemented very quickly, as we saw it in the Libyan case. But when there is no will, out of I don't know what reasons, then they can still remain on paper for 20 years without being implemented. So what is now very important for the government of Armenia to understand, that Armenia urgently needs peace with its neighbor. Armenia has 2 of its longest borders closed, the one with Azerbaijan, the other one with Turkey. It has lost almost half of its population. It has the weakest economy in the entire region. That's why people are leaving the country. It had 3 million population in the beginning of the 1990s, and now, according to different estimates, 1.5 million have remained in the country. The one independent recent survey showed that 64% of Armenians want to leave the country, primarily the young Armenians. So I think it should be a clear message and signal to the government of Armenia that this is not the policy to pursue. If you think really about the future of your country, you should find ways to come to terms with your neighbor to stop occupying large territories of another country, and also allow those civilians come back to their homes. Regrettably, my impression is that so far there is this understanding is failing on the part of the Armenian government. Although now living here in the United States, and I see here some representatives of the Armenian diaspora here in this room, we read from time to time also some very concerned articles from concerned Armenians who really now think that, okay, this is not the situation we wanted Armenia to have. when we started backing, supporting this country, our motherland, so to say, back 20 years ago. So one article I read is from Jural Rebaridyan, who was actually foreign policy advisor to the Armenian president in the 1990s, and he's a very respected diaspora Armenian who lives in Michigan, and he's a professor of Armenian studies there. He said, how can you build a nation without population? The depopulation of Armenia is the biggest threat for Armenia's future. It's much more important than Nagorno-Karabakh or the so-called genocide, he said. And we hear some other voices that say that we should be agents of change in Armenia. So blindly supporting Armenia, what Armenia does, is not helpful. So I hope these messages will be conveyed, or are conveyed to Yerevan, and the government there will understand how important it is for them, for the people of Armenia, to find a solution. And the best solution, also as proposed several times by the Minsk group of the OSCE, which is responsible for the mediation in this conflict, is the highest level of autonomy for Nagorno-Karabakh within Azerbaijan, even the higher level of autonomy that the Armenian minority in Nagorno-Karabakh enjoyed during the Soviet times. Also during the Soviet times, as we all know, the situation in Nagorno-Karabakh the economic conditions were the best in the entire Azerbaijan. Armenians enjoyed all rights, they had churches, they had theaters, university, the government was 99% Armenian, the parliament, etc. But now, even a higher autonomy would be possible. And that's the only reasonable solution. That self-rule within Azerbaijan, enabling Azerbaijani refugees getting back to their homes, and then opening all communications with Armenia between the two countries, starting trade, commercial relationship. I'll give you just one fact, which shows the spirit of good neighborly relations Azerbaijan has. For example, Azerbaijan State Oil Company in Georgia is the largest taxpayer in this country. The state oil company has invested $1 billion into Georgia's economy. During many of the hardest times Georgia had, for the last 7-8 years, Azerbaijan was on the side of Georgia, supporting it. Even sometimes causing problems for that support with other countries. But nevertheless, when our friend and partner, a neighbor needed our help, we were there. So that cooperation should be a signal also to Armenia that after resolution of this conflict, enormous opportunities will emerge for the same amount of partnership, cooperation between Armenia and Azerbaijan. But in order for that to happen, the territory, the illegal occupation should end, and refugees should go back to their homes.